Welcome to our esteemed guest, Mr. Pradeep Kashyap, our designated moderator, Professor Alok Kumar, the faculty members present, and last but not least, the student fraternity of IIM Visakhapatnam. Vriddhi envisions bringing together current and upcoming thought leaders to promote innovative insights and deep dive into the industry know-how under the umbrella of an annual theme, with this year's being normalizing digitalization, disruption, development. The summit incorporates panel discussions, keynote addresses, workshops, and several B-school competition orchestrated by the business cluster. Although the new normal brought about a paradigm shift in the way events are organized, IIM Visakhapatnam has kept up with the times through its series of leadership talks in the build-up to this year's conclave. I would like to take up this opportunity to introduce our esteemed speaker, Mr. Pradeep Kashyap. Known as the father of rural India, Mr. Kashyap is a global thought leader, having given over 500 talks all over the world. With over 2 decades of experience working with global MNCs, Mr. Kashyap started MART as a business mind social heart consultancy. Additionally, he has been the marketing advisor to Ministry of Rural Development and has served on various committees, including but not limited to the Prime Minister Office, RBI, and NABARD. He is also a consultant to the World Bank and the United Nations. He has advised dozens of MNCs such as Pepsi, GE, Philips, Intel, and more. Has further authored the most definitive rural marketing book, a standard text at premier MBA institutes. He has given talks at University of Cambridge, London Business School, and the University of Illinois, Chicago. Lastly, he is also a Lifetime Achievement Awardee of Rural Marketing Association of India and received the Distinguished Alumnus Award from BITS Pilani, along with Jamnalal Bajaj Award for his outstanding contribution to rural development. I would now like to call upon the moderator for today, Professor Alok Kumar, Assistant Professor, Production and Operations Management at IIM Visakhapatnam. His research interests are in multimodal logistics planning, data-driven logistics operations in Industry 4.0, and EV-based freight mobility systems. He holds a PhD and an MTech from IIT Roorkee and IIT Varanasi, respectively. Professor Kumar, over to you, sir.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Prem, and for inviting me to welcome respected Kashyap ji. So my good evening, pranam to you. So like Prem is explaining about all the key points. So but I feel there is no much introduction about Pradeep Kashyap sir. But I just want to find some of the interesting topic which is going to be covered in this, not the 50 year, I say it's a half century. So that is the half century, the learning of Pradeep sir and the challenges faces during the supporting to the social goods at large. As Vriddhi having a motto of enrich and emerge and progress. So I think it is a great platform to emerge with the young minds and get enrichment from the thoughts, experiences of Pradeep sir, and the last P, which is called as a progress. And I hope the students and our entire IIM Visakhapatnam fraternity will progress in the fluid world. So, sir, I welcome on the behalf of IIM Visakhapatnam to this particular talk, which is focusing on how you excel in these 50 years, building the multiple MNCs, supporting to the mission of Government of India or our great leader, Mahatma Gandhi, APJ Abdul Kalam. So, as all of you know, in Abdul Kalam, 3 billion, target 3 billion book. They mentioned that Pura. So Pura is nothing but is a complete. In English, translation of Pura is nothing but a complete. Yeah. So how we can complete the entire circle in terms of the development, in terms of the upliftment, in terms of the social well-being, and ultimately in support to the United Nations SDG. So the Pura is nothing but it's a provision of urban amenities and rural India. And respected Pradeep sir, translating many of the urban amenities the models, concept, the strategies, how we can build the urban amenities into the rural setup. So again, welcome you. So we will learn a lot of the new terminologies, new business models, which help all of us, not only to the students, also the faculties, to bridge the academia and practice. We are not talking as an industry, we call as a practice. So it is nothing but is a classroom and a practice gap. So now, sir, this is over to you, and we are happy to listen your this half century experiences for the rural transformation, and welcome you all the students, all the alumni, faculties, and everyone. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Alok. I have to cover a lot of ground, so I'm going to really get straight into it. Good evening to all of you. And I'm delighted to be here with you because, I have a passion that I want to spend maximum time with students. And there's hardly any IIM campus that I've not visited, because I feel that I have to hand over the legacy, whatever one has tried to create over the last 50 years, to you people. So the first thought I have is that don't think short term. Don't think about the COVID. There'll be many COVIDs in your lifetime of 50 years. So always think long term, right? And that's why when I was asked to give a talk, somebody said, why don't you give a talk on rural marketing? That is my subject. I can give a talk on it in my sleep because I've been doing that thing for 30 years. But I just felt that I would like to share, and that knowledge which I was going to give to you to rural marketing is available in my book, so you could also pick it up from there. But what I want to share with you are life lessons, are challenges that one has faced over the last 50 years. And believe you me, these are not challenges for me only. These are challenges that you will face. So please put yourself in my shoes. And when I say that I have faced this challenge, what you should be saying to yourself is that you will face this challenge. Then it becomes meaningful to you. Okay? So let me start by giving you a little background. I was no good at academics. I was no good at sports. I was no good at drama, no good at debate. So throughout my school life, I never got onto the school stage to receive any prize or award. The same sad story continued at BITS Pilani. The 5 years that I was BITS, I never got onto the BITS stage. The first time I got onto the BITS stage was 50 years later when I was honored with the Distinguished Alumnus Award. Okay. And after that, I started my career. I don't have an MBA. I've never been to a business school. I joined Exide Batteries, which was then a British company. I worked there for 7 years. From there, I moved on to Marico Bosch, a German company, and worked there for 7 years. And then my last corporate job was with Denso, the Japanese auto ancillary, which is the largest auto ancillary in the world. If you ask me what was my performance at these three corporates, I would say good, but nothing outstanding. So that trend of being an ordinary person with no outstanding capabilities continued right through my school, college, and my corporate career. So I was getting quite restless by the time I was finishing Denso. And a whole of feeling was bothering me that, I'm going to turn 40 this year, that year when I was talking about this thing. And I have no achievement to show to the world, right? I could actually go into history as an ordinary person who retired as a frustrated man who achieved nothing very much. But strangely, it was around the same time that I met my spiritual guru. And it was he who helped me find my purpose. Because I said, I'm going to turn 40 this year and I have no purpose, so what do I do? So he said that sometimes the way to find yourself, right, is to lose yourself in the service of others. And he said, for you, your purpose seems to be to help the poor improve their quality of life. So the year I turned 40, with the blessings of my guru and the total support of my wife, because without that, it would not have been possible, I voluntarily decided to opt out of the corporate sector and get into rural development. So you can imagine no income, no salary, because I've now left the corporate world, no car and driver, no annual holiday for the family, no medical, nothing. So that was easily the most difficult decision of my corporate life. Because you see, when you give up a job and take another job, that's not a big challenge at all. That's in fact for your own personal gains. But here I was giving up everything and I didn't know from where my next income will come. Right? Because I had no plans. It was just what my guru said. So I said, I'm going ahead. And from the comfort zone of the corporate world, I would be thrown into the rural sector about which I knew nothing. Believe you me, I come from an upper middle class family. I had never visited a village in my life prior to my leaving the corporate sector. And here I was going to, wear a kurta pajama and get into the villages of India without knowing anything. So that was the context. Okay. Now, I joined an NGO, and some months later, the president of the NGO was invited to deliver a talk on low-cost housing, because that was a specialization of that NGO, to work on mud housing and low-cost housing in a workshop at Bhubaneswar. So the president asked me to accompany him to Bhubaneswar. And we arrived there, we checked into the hotel, and in the evening he knocked on my door and said, Pradeep, I have to rush back to Delhi because there's something very urgent that's come up. So I said, I'm also coming back with you. He says, no, you will make the presentation tomorrow morning. I said, you must be kidding. I don't even know the spelling of mud housing. So what will I do? He says, no, what we'll do is that for the next 1 hour, we will sit down and I will dictate to you what to say slide after slide, for each slide, what to say. Okay. I said, but how will I learn this? I don't know anything. He says, you will learn it because you have a marketing background. You're a decent speaker, so you should be okay. So next morning I got onto the stage when my turn came and I looked around and I didn't know a single soul, naturally, because I had just come into the sector. So I knew the corporate world. I didn't know anybody in the social sector. So I said to myself that in any case, I will never see these people again. So at worst, I'm going to make a fool of myself, okay? Because I don't know anything about the subject. So without a worry, I just went ahead and spoke whatever I had rattled. And I had rattled all night. You believe me? I forgot to tell you that I didn't sleep a wink. I was going on da da da, ye bolna, and that's the way I was going on. So I delivered my thing, and we broke for tea. And the Joint Secretary, Rural Development, Government of India, was also there. He approached me and he said, Mr. Kashyap, that was a brilliant presentation. I said, Pakde gaye. So I confessed, I said, I don't know anything about mud housing. I must be honest with you, this was my president thing, but he had to rush back and I told him the story. So he said, Mr. Kashyap, what is your specialization? I said, my specialization is marketing. He says, oh my God, we've been looking for a marketing advisor for the Ministry of Rural Development for a long time, and we are not finding anybody suitable. So here is my card. Come and see me in Delhi in my office, and we'll take the matter from there. I went to his office the next day because I also returned by the evening flight. I went to his office the next day, and lo and behold, he offered me the job of the marketing advisor to the government, to the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, right? And here I had never visited a village before. Can you imagine the situation? So I was delighted. But now here was a catch, and here was the sad news. He says, because we are the government, our salary levels are very low, and I'm talking of the 90s, so the salaries were very low in the government. So he says, you'll be a consultant, and the consultancy that we can offer you. I said to myself, sir, this is only 20% of my last drawn corporate salary. He said, but that's all we can offer you. So I said, okay, now let's see. So sitting on his desk in the chair, I said, the obvious negative is that I will get 20% of the salary. That's known. I said, are there any positives? So I said, okay, the first positive is that I will get an understanding, a macro understanding of the rural sector. Sitting in Delhi at the central ministry, I would be interacting with all the state governments. I would be visiting the blocks and districts and all. So that would be the first positive. The second positive would be that as the representative of the Ministry of Rural Development, I'll be invited to all conferences and seminars and workshops, okay, which I was. And that fast-tracked my learning because these were the experts, these were the who's who of the rural sector, right? So I learned from them. And the third positive was that I would get appointment onto national committees. So when you introduced me, you were talking about the committees of Reserve Bank or, SIDBI and all that. So I said, I accept. So for 2 years, I worked at 20% of my last round salary. And 2 years later, when the contract got over, that's when I decided to start MART. And when we started giving proposals to various funding agencies, the good thing was that most of the people said, oh, we know Mr. Kashyap because we're on the same committee, or we have met Mr. Kashyap at this conference, right? So it became easy for MART to get business, to get work. Okay? And whatever money I had lost, I mean, I don't want to brag, but the fact is that when we started quoting from MART, my consultancy rates, these were 100 times, not 100%, 100 times higher than what the ministry had paid me, right? And the donors were willing to pay that because now I had the stamp that I have been the marketing advisor to the Ministry of Rural Development. It's a big title, not much substance, but big title. So ultimately, there are 3 lessons to be learned from this. The first lesson is nothing ventured, nothing gained. If I had just carried on in the corporate sector, one more job, and then I would have retired like a frustrated, non-performing, non-achiever, right? So I showed the courage to take on the challenge. And if I had not taken the challenge, I would never have found my purpose. Today, I'm passionate about my purpose because I found it. The problem is 99.9% of us will go away from life without finding our purpose because we are afraid to move from the comfort zone. जो मैं जानता हूं वही करूंगा उससे ज्यादा मेरे को नहीं पता. But my purpose may be something very different. Like in my case, my purpose was to work in the villages where I've never been before. Right? Okay. So that was the first lesson. And if I had not taken it, there would be no father of rural marketing because I would never have reached where one has tried to reach. The second lesson is, and this is not important for you today, but it will become important for you 10, 15 years from now, that some of us are late bloomers. We blossom late in life. Till age 40, I told you my whole track record was no good, average. And suddenly things have started opening up. Okay? So don't write off your life if by 30 you've not achieved much or by 35 you've not achieved much. The fact of the matter is that each one of us has a place in the sun. God has created us because he has created a place for us in the sun. But we don't trust God and we say, I will not achieve anything. But if you leave it in his hand, like I just followed my guru, he said, go into the villages, I went into the villages. Okay? And the third big lesson, which you may not appreciate fully today, but will appreciate as you become more mature, is that sometimes in life, you have to lose temporarily to gain permanently. And this is what happened, right? Because I started working at 20% of the salary, and within 2 years, I was getting 100 times that as consultancy, right? But what happens is that whenever we are finding another job, we say, oh, the salary must be higher, but we don't consider all the other perks, all the other good things about the organization, which could give us a kickstart to get to the next level. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the story continues, right? And now I have, during my 2-year travels into rural India, I was deeply moved by the abject poverty that I saw. And I told you, I come from an upper middle class background. I had never visited a village. So what I saw really disturbed me. And I decided that I had to do something. So, but having experienced the impersonal, what's in it for me, selfish culture of multinational companies, I was convinced that and determined that my organization, which I start, would offer lifelong belonging and a sense of self-giving, not gimme, 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 this perk, that perk, but giving. You get it? Okay. And so what I did was I studied different kinds of organizations. So you have the government departments, you have the private sector, you have the social sector organizations, and then you also have the institution of marriage, and then you have the institution of the family. So I realized that the only institution to which we continue to belong throughout our lives is the family. I can walk out of a marriage, I can leave a job, right? So MART is based on family values. Now, what are these family values? Okay, the first family value is that there is no one designation, right? So I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. Right? So I have different designations, right? And the second thing was the lifelong belonging. So what I've done is that whoever completes 10 years is inducted into MART as a partner. Okay? And slowly, my vision is that everybody should become a partner, then co-owner of the organization. And I have, in any case, retired 4 years back. I don't have a single share in the company, and I have no ownership, right? Because why should I continue to have ownership? My whole idea was that it should benefit the people who are working in the organization. Okay. Transparency. You know, if in the corporate sector there is no transparency. If I want to know somebody else's salary, the admin and finance department will never tell me. In MART, anybody can walk to the finance department and ask what is the other guy's salary. Because we believe that only if you're transparent will the employees realize that you are not playing favorites. Because in any organization, the boss will always favor somebody and try and give him a higher increment and all. So in our case, we are very, very careful on that. Okay. And the CEO is the head of the family. Now, there's a difference between being a CEO of the head of the company. In my case, you should understand that when most people have joined straight after college, and most of them have got married while working at MART. In 2-3 cases, the father of the bride to be, who was under consideration for one of our boys, he met me first before he met the boy's father, because he wanted to understand के वो लड़के का फ्यूचर करियर फ्यूचर क्या है, ये मार्ट क्या ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, कंसल्टेंसी क्या होता है, उसमें पैसे कैसा बनता है, right? So I have played multiple roles. When somebody is sick in the organization, I put him in the car and taken him to the doctor and bought his medicines and put him back in his home. So will any corporate CEO do that? So this is a family feeling. Okay. All right. Then, yeah, I've mentioned that we are a business mind, social heart organization. There is a whole philosophy behind it. I'll not have the time to go too deep into it. But you see, NGOs are social mind, social heart. So they're the do-gooders, and that's why they don't expand their business, because they don't have a strategy to expand, right? Because they don't have that knowledge. It's you people who are working in management, studying in management schools, who learn strategy and how to scale up and all. Okay. Then you have the corporates who have a business mind, but unfortunately also a cruel business heart, because they're all the time doing a rip-off, whether they're working with the poor or who. They want the best price for their products. They want the maximum profits for themselves. Okay? And then you have the government, which follows the wrong mind and the wrong heart, with the result that things don't really then happen. So this is the new generation organization. So I've got a 2x2 matrix, which which is sort of credited to me. where we talk about the benefits of a business mind social heart. See, why a business mind? Because to tackle poverty is much more difficult than selling soap or selling whatever I sold in my life. Okay? I can tell you that the 17 years that I work in the corporate sector was a cakewalk compared to tackling poverty, because the issues and the cycle of poverty is very, very complex. So you require the best minds to find solutions. But you can only find solutions if you have a good heart. It's like a mother, when the child falls sick, it is not the medicines that cure the child, it is the mother's love that cures the child. The medicines are incidental. So here also, if you don't feel for the poor with whom you are working, then you will not find good solutions. But if you care for them like the mother, you will find the best solutions. Okay, so that's a philosophy of this. Then, I've just made a few notes so that I don't miss out. Yeah. So, and I also want to share with you, without bragging, that our list of clients, of corporate clients, would compare favorably with McKinsey's list of clients. And most of the people who work with us are people from small towns. Okay? So, I hate to say this, but we don't have anybody from an IIM. Right? Because this is one other philosophy that I had, was that if people don't get the opportunity to study at an IIM, they should be able to, they still have the capability to do good stuff. And that's the reason why we've got all our people are from small towns, they're from non-IIMs, okay? But our client list, as I mentioned, is the same or similar to McKinsey's. Of course, they do many more times business, but if I take the list, it's almost similar. So the point the lesson here is that when you work with passion for a higher purpose, then even ordinary people, these ordinary people from small towns, not the best institutes, even they can achieve extraordinary results. Okay, so that's the next lesson. Then I come to Project Shakti. Some of you may have heard of Project Shakti, which we work with Unilever. I'll just give you a little background. See, Unilever had penetrated all villages up to a population of 2,000 plus. So according to the census, the villages are divided into categories below total population, below 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 to 5,000 population, and 5,000 and above. So they had catered to the bigger 2,000 plus population villages, which account for 17% in number, but 50% in population. Okay? So they now, since they had already catered to this 50%, the remaining 50% was still unserved by Unilever, but they didn't have a business model because these are very tiny, small villages. So the size of the order is small and the cost of reach is high. So it's a double whammy. So how do you find a business model which is sustainable? So Unilever approached us, and we at that time were working with women's self-help groups. See, this is an instrument the government has created to tackle poverty. So 10 women come together, they form a group, they have savings, and once they have a certain amount of savings, they get a matching loan from NABARD. And then individually, they take up some business, a micro enterprise. So they may do vegetable vending, fish vending, selling local cosmetics, by going door to door, or buying a silaika machine and doing some, stitching and all that. So we had been working with these self-help groups for many years because we are experts on that. Okay. So when Unilever approached us, I said that what we will do is to have one woman identified from the self-help group and appoint her as a dealer for Unilever products, and she will go door to door selling in her own village and one or two neighboring villages. That is the essential model. Now, for that, Unilever didn't have to invest anything in infrastructure because the dealer is living in the village itself and she's walking. So there is no cost of transport or anything. Okay. And the delivery is made by the local, by the retail dealer of Unilever, who's at the block level, and he delivers the order from this woman. And the minimum order is 20,000 rupees, for which the woman takes a loan from the bank, and that's how it works. So we have appointed 60,000 women as dealers for Unilever. And these women, most of them have doubled their family income. So it's a very important enterprise for them. And Unilever now gets an additional sale of 1,000 crores annually from this newly created channel. And I can tell you, when we signed off this project in 2005, without exaggeration, when I used to visit the Unilever head office in Bombay, they would lay out the red carpet treatment because they had tackled a very major challenge. Okay? So they have benefited. The government's responsibility is to create more income generating businesses or micro enterprises. So 60,000 have created their own micro enterprise. So the government has achieved its target. NABARD, which is the lending agency, these women take a loan from NABARD's nominated bank in that area. So it's a win for all model. Okay? For the women, for Unilever, for the government, for the bank. Okay? And this has now become a Harvard case study. Okay? If you go onto the Harvard site, you'll find Harvard Business School. It's a 30, 40 page document. Okay? And once this happened, then other companies, Colgate came to us, we've done Project Disha with them. Novartis came to us, we've done Project Arogya with them. And Tata Shakti came to us and we've done a Hard Hangama campaign with them. Okay? So this one success has multiplied and spread to many other companies. And today it's a well-established model. But when Unilever approached us and my corporate sector and social sector friends, when they heard about it, some of them rang me up and they said, Pradeep, you are known to do such good work. Why are you wasting your time and playing with this little toy? इसमें कोई दम नहीं है, इसमें कोई business model नहीं बन सकता है. So my standard answer was that नहीं बनेगा तो it'll be a failure. They won't hang me. It'll be a failure, right? But in that process, we may learn something, or even if we don't learn anything, the point is, if we don't try it, then we gain nothing. So remember one thing, that pioneers are always ridiculed. And this I'm saying, this has been my story for the last 30 years, ever since I came into the sector. Every time I tried something new, I was ridiculed. It was only when it got established, then, it started working. But see, the other thing is that I was, over these 30 years, I've been an outsider all through. Because when I came into the sector and the NGO said, he's not from an IRMA, he's not from XIM, so what does he know about rural development? Okay? And he has no background of social sciences. So I was an outsider with them. I was an outsider with even the corporate sector when I was working there, because you see, my family ran a very successful business, but I was the first guy in the family to take up a job. So when my colleagues heard that my father was running a business, they said, "Yaar, tum ek do saal kaam karoge, phir you will go back to your father's business." So this, I was treated as an outsider because I was not a long-term player as far as they were concerned. It was the same thing with the others, that the government, when I was appointed the marketing advisor, some of the officers there asked me, which batch IAS are you? I said, I'm not from the IAS at all. So they dumped me. Okay. The academic world, where all of you come from, the academic world always says to me that you don't have a PhD. You have not taught you're not a regular professor at any university. So you're not a purebred academic. I said, I've written the standard text on rural marketing, and I taught full-term courses at IRMA and at XIM, but no. So I've remained an outsider. And believe you me, somebody who's from your college or your neighborhood or from your background, we whatever be his qualifications or his capabilities, we include him in our group. यार ये तो अपने background का है, या अपने शहर का है, या अपने whatever it be. So whereas an outsider has to work much harder to get accepted. And this is what has happened to me. And now when I look back, I thank all those people who resisted me, who didn't include me in the group. And I had to work harder to, make myself acceptable to them. Because I ended up acquiring much better knowledge, because I had to get that better knowledge to get accepted. So if you ever have a situation where you are an outsider, just look at God and say, you've given me this challenge, God, I will come out winner. Right? And I will not feel isolated, or I'll not feel frustrated that why have you isolated me? Isolation has its own benefits. Okay. Then I quickly want to talk about humility is the hallmark of true leadership. This is what I've experienced. And I want to share two small examples. The first is, Ela Bhatt. I don't know how many of you have heard of Ela Bhatt, the founder of Seva in Ahmedabad, which has a membership of, I think now about 9 lakhs or some number like that. And see, I had just come into the sector in 1990, and I had organized a training program at IRMA, okay? Because I was teaching a full credit course there, so I had time. So I had announced a training program on marketing of rural products for NGO managers. Okay? And the day the program started, I was on the dais and I was to start the thing, when one of the participants walked up from where he was sitting, came to me and whispered in my ears, saying, Sir, Ela Bhatt bhi बैठी हैं नीचे audience में, आप उनको ऊपर बुला लीजिए dais पे. So I didn't know who Ela Bhatt was, right? But from the tone of this man's voice, I could make out that she must be an important person. So I came down from the dais and I walked up to Ela Bhatt, and I said, Ela Bhatt, आप dais पे आ जाइए, because अच्छा नहीं लगता आप यहाँ बैठी हैं. So she said, Pradeep, ये जो बाकी 20 लोग हैं, ये लोग भी आपसे मार्केटिंग सीखने आए हैं और मैं भी आपसे मार्केटिंग सीखने आई हूँ. तो मेरी जगह तो वहीं है जहाँ ये लोग बैठे हैं, तो मैं तो यहीं बैठूंगी. Okay? Now, during lunchtime, I found out from one of the participants who she was. She is a Padma Bhushan. Okay? She is a Magsaysay awardee. Whenever Hillary Clinton comes to India, the one destination in common is always visiting Ela Bhatt. And Hillary Clinton says openly that she is my guru. So this is the humility of a person with, the kind of achievements that she has, which I've just shared with you. The second example is, there was a advisory committee meeting in NABARD on marketing of rural products. So the chairman of NABARD, okay, the deputy governor of the Reserve Bank of India, the chairman of Khadi Commission, and 3 or 4 other very senior people were sitting in the room, and me. And I was the least known, obviously, because I had just come into the sector. Nobody knew me. Okay? So the discussion went on, and when the discussion ended, the deputy governor, Mr. D.R. Mehta, who later on became the chairman of SEBI, okay, he walked up to me and he says, Mr. Kashyap, you had some very good points about marketing of rural products. So would you have the time to meet me this evening at 4 o'clock? And I said, sir, you are asking me, I have all the time. I've come to Bombay only for this meeting. I have no other agenda. And in any case, you're the busy person, the deputy governor. So I said, I'm free anytime. He says, ठीक है, 4 बजे मिलते हैं. He sent a car for me. He had somebody wait at the RBI reception. And I then walked into his room, which was the size of a skating rink, without exaggeration. And We had a great 1 hour meeting and then started a correspondence, which went on for several months before he was transferred to SEBI. So look at the humility of the man. So the one thing that I've learned over these 30 years, because I've had the good fortune to interact with some of the best minds in the world. Dr. Jagdish Seth, who's just got the Padma Bhushan some months back, he's the man. Have you studied the 4A's model of marketing? The awareness, availability, accessibility. Anyway, if you haven't, you will, because like the 4 P's of Philip Kotler, there are the 4A's of Jagdish Seth. And he's ranked as the #1 marketing professor in the world. Now, on 2 occasions ahead of Philip Kotler. So he has come to our office several times, and all he has asked is, K Pradeep, bas idli khilao, yaar, main to idli khata hu, aur kuch nahi khata. So, I mean, such humility of these people that from day one, this was one thing that has stayed with me. So these are the 2 examples I wanted to give, and here I wanted to link my philosophy of and my practice of leadership. See, I'm essentially a very low-profile person by nature. I don't, attend evening parties or get-togethers, the industry get-togethers. So I have followed the Gandhian servant leadership model, where I've always put my team members forward to get into the limelight, because I'm not a limelight person. The second thing is that I've learned compassion from my mother. And that's what I have put to practice in MART. And what I have found is that when people get demotivated or disinterested, see, if you have a tough boss, then it's very difficult to correct the situation, because the employee will not share the real reason why he's feeling demotivated or feeling depressed, right? Whereas in my case, because I am compassionate and looking at people from the other side, people they talk very freely with me, my staff, because they know that sir will never, hold it against them, and he will never get tough, because it's not in my nature to get tough. So the advantage of that has been that we've had very few people leave us. Okay? I mean, even today, we've got several people who are close to completing 20 years at MART. And in today's world, where youngsters are, jumping jobs every 2 years or 3 years, to work 20 years is becoming ancient. But that's the benefit I see. Whereas you may think that means he's turning duddy-fuddy and he's not learning anything new. So that's the philosophy. Now, I also want to add 1 or 2 more things. One is that, see, to motivate your people, you need to engage with their emotion, not just their mind. The unfortunate thing is that most corporate leaders only talk numbers and involve the mind, but not the emotion. And the key to the heart of people is a story. Because storytelling is a very personal and emotional experience, and therefore allows management ideas to be, sugar-coated into thinking, and people then remember the management idea. Because, see, even today we'll remember childhood stories, what our grandmother and mother told us, right? Whether it's tales from the Mahabharata or Ramayana or Harishchandra or Dhruv or, so many of these stories. So I am a great storyteller. That's how, whenever there is an opportunity, so whether it's somebody's birthday or we are having lunch together or something, I always keep telling corporate stories, but bringing in the emotions of the story. And that has helped me a lot. So I'm sharing just some thoughts about leadership. And the other thing is that from time to time, I prepare tea for everyone. and then I collect the utensils and I prepare tea, serve it, collect the utensils and wash the utensils. Because I want to break the feeling of the organization hierarchy. Okay? And in the office, nobody calls me boss. They just say, "Ye to hamare guru hain." And I mean, I find it very awkward, but at least 50% of our staff, when they will see me, they will touch my feet in today's world, which is something that even I find is unheard of and, not something you do. The other thing is that for 10 long years, I deliberately wore a kurta pajama and never wore a trouser or, a blazer or suit, because I wanted to break the stereotype image of a suited, booted corporate CEO. Because then there is an aura and there's an image around the person. So I have always tried to keep things simple and make them, and make people accessible. Because unless they get the opportunity to interact with the boss, see, they've all joined a small organization. We are a small organization with about 50 people. So we are not, the McKinsey's or the Boston Consulting Groups of the world. So when you join a small organization, you join it only because your philosophy matches with the leader's philosophy, with this, you may call him CEO, I call him the leader, with the leader's philosophy. So there is a additional sense of responsibility on the leader to behave in a manner which is acceptable to everyone. Right? So that's what one has tried to do. Okay. Okay, so these were, some challenges, some thoughts that I wanted to share. And I'd be very happy to take as many questions as possible. I've purposely tried to shorten this talk so that you have time for some questions, but please don't ask me difficult questions. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for your patient hearing. I don't know, how much of this you have absorbed or understood. But anyway, if not today, maybe 10 years later, you will recall.
Okay, so thank you very much, sir. So what I found, because I want to mention before your session, your talk is more focused on what we called as a 3C, because initially I want to mention 3C. So first, challenges, chance, and career. So I found all the answers in sequential manner, but now onwards, I also found one more C. So that C is nothing but care for society. How we are providing a human well-being, a social well-being, a industrial well-being to the greater set of the people. So and also because you are contributing to the Mahatma Gandhi's thought or the mission. So the future of India is living in its villages. So it is like a great startup support to the rural economy. So actually, I think Akshay is here.
Yes, sir.
So we have up to 5:30, no?
Sir, you can ask for 15 minutes you can go.
Yeah. Okay. So some of the questions which I've already answered, but I again repeat and shortcut. So you founded MART in 1993, when no one ever thinking about the marketing of the products in the rural India. So what striking trends did you notice that motivated you to set up a rural marketing consultancy firm?
Thank you very much, Alok. That's a great question, and I'm so happy you asked this question. See, we had already been working with the poor women through the self-help groups and other platforms. So So we were working at the grassroots level, right? So all our work was visit the village, sit with the people, and then work there. So what I noticed was, first thing is that the decade of the 90s actually belonged to women's empowerment. And I'm so happy to see so many young girls here. Women's empowerment in three ways. The first is, if you recall, Rajiv Gandhi had introduced a new Panchayati Raj bill in which 30% of the panchayat was reserved for women. Okay, so that means women suddenly got mobility because they had to come to the block town to attend the panchayat meetings or the block meetings. Okay, so that was the first thing. The second thing was the women's self-help group movement, which I talked about, was launched in the early 90s by NABARD. And what is this self-help group movement? That women save some small money, and when they have a certain corpus, then they take a loan, matching loan from NABARD at a very nominal rate of 4 or 5% interest. And then each of them takes a loan from within the group and starts some activity. Okay. So by now, there are 7 million of these groups. Okay. That means each group having 10 members. So 70 million families in rural India have a member from their family in a group. So this movement has already started in the early 90s, and we were working with a number of groups in several states. That was one of our big programs then. Okay. And the third thing was that, see, the women's literacy rate, if you look at the census data over the last 50 years, the women's literacy rate was growing at a much lower rate than the men's literacy rate. But this was the one decade where the women's literacy rate started growing very rapidly because the literacy mission was introduced by the government. So a lot of effort was on women's literacy. So when women become literate, then they become consumers. If they are illiterate, they are not your consumers. Similarly, when women become panchayat members, then they have mobility, then they can go to the nearby, when they go to the nearby town for meetings, they can also buy things from there. So 90s was the decade when women actually became consumers for corporate products. Now they started buying their tea and their soap and their shampoo themselves. Earlier, they used to leave it to men. And what would the men do? The woman would say, chai lete ho aana. In the evening, he would stop at the local shop and say, chai de de yaar. Or he would say, Tata tea de de. And the retailer would say, Saab, Tata tea to hai nahi, Lipton tea hai, bahut badhiya hai. Wahi daam pe hai, aap le jaiye. और चाय तो चाय है, वो तो मेन चीज तो भाभी के हाथ में जादू है, वो कैसी चाय बनाती हैं. तो you know, so the man was least interested. अच्छा ठीक है यार, जो तू ठीक बोलता है दे दे. And then the dealer would say, इसके साथ एक स्टील का ग्लास भी है, भाभी बहुत खुश हो जाएंगी. So end of story. Okay. Now women have got empowered and they make their own decisions even for buying what they want to buy. So that was the second trend. The third trend was when I was traveling through Punjab. Now Punjab we know as a more prosperous state. So I saw so many beauty parlors come up in villages in Punjab. So I said to myself, if this is happening in Punjab today, it will happen in Bihar 10 years, 20 years later, right? So that means that the rural market has started evolving. Okay? These were the early trends. Then when I saw the shelves in rural India, I was shocked to see sanitary napkins in retail counters, right? Modern cosmetics, not the local cosmetics, some of the regional cosmetics. So this whole thing about beauty of women has now emerged because the women have to go out as panchayat members and also they should also look more attractive. So that was the next thing. And of course, the rising income, because agriculture started doing well in that period. Okay. So these 4 or 5 factors, when you put them together, because we were watching it on a daily basis since we used to travel to these areas. So that's why we could see it, the trend early. And that's when we started talking to some companies. And believe you me, it's very interesting. There are 2 companies that I least expected that came forward. One was Hero Motors then, now Hero Motor Corp, and the second was Maruti. I made a presentation to their top management, in one case to the board, and Brijmohan Munjal, who was then the chairman of Hero MotoCorp, he said to me after the meeting, he says, हम तो जा रहे हैं रूल, हमने तो जाना है, आपने तो बहुत हमें बता दिया, बहुत opportunity है वहाँ पे. They decided to appoint 6,000 guys, one in each block, to promote motorcycles. And today, do you know, Hero MotoCorp makes 6 million bikes a year, out of which 3 million bikes sell in rural India, because they were early birds getting into the rural market. Maruti, when we talked to them, they said the same thing, and they appointed 7,000 of these field people, as they call them, regional sales agents. And today, Maruti produces 1.3 million cars, out of which 400,000 plus are sold in the villages of India, not in small towns, in the villages of India. So, you know, if you have the foresight and if you can see things early, then you're the winner. But this is where the risk factor comes in. No, because I mean, both these companies took a risk by investing so much money, but courage or risk-taking creates opportunities. So you have to create the opportunities in the market. The trouble with many companies whom we met was कि आप हमें प्रूव करके बता दीजिए, एक ब्लॉक ले लीजिए, एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट ले लीजिए, प्रूव करके बता दीजिए कि वहाँ पे मार्केट है. But both these companies took a national decision because they had the vision to see that that's the way the rural is headed. Does that answer the question?
Yes, perfectly. So, like a follow-up question with the previous question. So, what are the major challenges? Like you pointed out the example of Hero MotoCorp or Maruti. And still, I think that may be sufficient, we can say, the barriers to enter to the rural market. So what are the major challenges faced by the MART, the finding the emerging market and serving in the retail, the rural retail market?
Hello, kya ho raha hai कि you people are now talking only rural marketing, which was the topic I said I didn't want to talk about.
Yeah. No,
because my thing was more talking about life journey, but sure.
Yeah.
So,
So what are the like one or two major challenges?
See, the first challenge we faced was that there was no data, no reliable data on the rural sector. Okay. So unless you have data, how do you plan your market?
Yeah.
Now, there are 6.4 lakh villages, 6.4 lakh villages. There are 7,000 blocks. There are 700 districts. There are 8,000 small towns, and there are 50 big cities. Okay. Now, unless I have more granular data on each of these places, how do I plan? Should I go to Timbuktu or should I go to Jubri Talaya?
Yeah.
Which market should I open? Because nobody can open the whole national market in one go.
Yeah.
Neither levers, nobody.
Yes.
Because India is too vast and too diversified a country.
Right.
So the first thing we had to do, you know, we have taken the census data and we have created a market tool, market attractiveness tool, for which we have got some 3 million data points from the census.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the nearest market, the nearest private public health center, blah, 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 which is all put together. And then we have created this marketing index to decide which are the top markets in each state. So you can, this is a dynamic tool where you can give different weightages to whatever factors you think are important for your company. For example, if you're in the health sector, then you would be interested in knowing how many hospitals, how many clinics, how many nursing homes in that place,
Right.
not how many retail counters or grocery shops. But if you're in the FMCG market, the business, then you would want to know how many retail outlets and how many wholesale outlets and all that.
Right.
So you can give your own weightage. So that was the first thing we had to do.
Right.
The second challenge was convincing corporate India. Okay, I don't know how many CEOs I have met during that decade of the 90s. Okay, And that's why I called the decade of I've got a 4D model. So the decade of the 90s is the first one. So the first D is denial. Corporate India was in total denial. I won't name companies and I won't name the CEOs, but they said, आप उनके पास खाने का तो पैसा नहीं है, हमारा प्रोडक्ट क्या खरीदेंगे? And then they end up buying a Maruti car and they end up buying a Hero MotoCorp bike. So, and each one of them would say कि आप हमें एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट में प्रूव करके दे दीजिए कि ये मार्केट है, राइट? और फिर उसको सर्विस कैसे करना है, रोड नेटवर्क ठीक नहीं है तो कैसे पहुंचेंगे ये. So this is the decade of doubt, of denial. The next decade, which is 2000 to 2010, is the decade of doubt. अभी भी डाउट चल रहा है, but now they're saying, अच्छा चलिए 2 ब्लॉक में कर लेते हैं, चलिए वहां कर लेते हैं, and some companies are coming forward. The third D, which is 2010 to 2020, is the decade of demand. Now, corporate India doesn't know what has happened there. They are really drowning under their own demand. So, I mean, whether it was Hero MotoCorp or Maruti, all of them are running here and there कि भैया demand गांव से आ रही है, I mean, village market से आ रही है, supply करो. And in the meanwhile, therefore, what happened? A lot of regional players have moved in. Do you know something? There is a potato chip company in Ahmedabad called Balaji Chips. Balaji Chips turnover is it's twice as much as Pepsi's Lay's turnover. Because they saw the early opportunity, and their CEO has a beautiful, brilliant thing. He says, you know, बच्चों को पॉकेट मनी कितनी मिलती है? 5 रुपया. तो चिप्स बनाओ जिससे इतने उसको चिप्स मिले कि 5 रुपए में उसका पेट भर जाए और पेट खराब नहीं हो, क्योंकि पेट खराब होगा, आप चीप ऑयल यूज करोगे तो उसकी माँ उसको अगली बार बोलेगी कि बालाजी के चिप्स नहीं लेने, और अगर उसका पेट नहीं भरेगा तो फिर आपको फायदा नहीं है. सो ब्यूटीफुल स्ट्रेटजी which has worked, and today they're twice as big as Pepsi, and Pepsi will Lay's will keep hiring all these sort of Bollywood actresses to promote their product. It doesn't work that way, because unless you give value for money, you could be having the most good-looking actress, dancing here and there. I mean, kids don't get attracted by this. Nobody does, actually. I don't know why we have this endorsement advertising. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah. So, sir, I would like to put the last question.
Sure.
Yeah. So how can one improve? Like I am also including myself to make work-life balance. Like you switched a corporate journey in 40s, and from 40s to today, you are completely investing your time, your money, energy, everything for the social cause. So how you are making a balance in work and life?
Okay. This is something very interesting. I have worked in the corporate sector and all these sectors for 50 years. Okay. Right from my early days, the first thing I did was I never bought a briefcase. When those days, briefcase ka zamana hota tha. And I always left office at the close of office hours. My boss would be sitting around, but I used to leave the office on time. And my boss got so used to it that even when there was an urgency or emergency to do something, he would hesitatingly ask, can you stay back for another half an hour? Kuch thoda sa important kaam hai and all. Because when I look back now, or even then, I realized that you cannot impress your boss by staying late. You have to impress him with your quality of work and the output of your work. And I feel in these 50 years, I have not lost out any promotion or any benefits by not staying late. Because to me, this work balance is very important. Even in MART, it's a standard practice. Everybody, you can talk to anybody at MART, and they will tell you, sir, on the dot 5:30 बजे निकल जाते हैं. चाहे यहाँ आग लग रही हो, हमें किसी client को study report submit करना है. Because my philosophy is that if you are not able to do it on time, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
So, and believe you me, this is something I will guarantee you that you will not lose anything in your career by not staying late.
Yeah.
This is a fear we have. Okay, what will the boss saying? He'll not give me a promotion or he'll not give me the increment. That's not true. Because you are paid for working up to 5:30, you work. But nowadays, of course, with social media and the intrusion of the mobile phone and email and all that, now that's where you have to see how you want to do it. Because my life, working life, is over, and I'm glad that I was not a victim of social media.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
So that's what I would say about this.
Yeah.
Not an issue.
So thank you very much, sir. So you rightly mentioned your 4D, and I also pointed out the 4 different C for these young minds, which can be, we consider these 4 C's as the learning path, and just taking some of the important points from the discussion, how they can face the challenges in the rest of the life, how they can look at for the chance, the second C, and finally the third C, how they can grow in their future career. And the last, or we can say the topmost, if we make a hierarchy, the topmost, I recommend them, they should be care for the society, care for the family.
Oh yeah, very good.
So that is the 4th C, which is very important. Like in the, if you look at to this fluid word, now this is not a dynamic word, it's a very, very fluid word. So we should look at for the 4th C. Like you are also mentioned that the 5:30, everybody should leave the office. So that means they have enough time for family, they have enough time for their social work, they have enough time for contributing to the society. So with these words, I just want to conclude, and from somewhere I have getting a quote, which I think you mentioned, to get rich, sell to the poor. And you already...
and this is something I said much before K Prahalad has come out with his bottom of the pyramid philosophy, because I had been working with the rural poor 15 years before he ever thought of it. But my catchy slogan was to get rich, serve the poor. But I think the bottom of the pyramid caught on much better.
Yeah, so I rightly get the example to understand this. You highlighted the example of Balaji differs. So because they are also not only looking for the money, they are looking for that particular set of customers, that children, school children. So with their good health, with their complete, we can say the marginal utility at the top. So thank you very much, sir. It's very nice. It's a great learning for academia, great learning for life, and also the great learning for giving back to something to the society. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Alok. You did a very good job of moderating, because you made my task much easier.
Yeah. So now over to Ishita Ghosh.
Thank you. To summarize this wonderful keynote session by Mr. Pradeep Kashyap, founder of MART, founder of Rural India, and TEDx speaker, which was brilliantly moderated by Professor Dr. Alok Kumar, we understood how important it is to find purpose and passion and the need to move away from our comfort zone. For each one of us, there is a different plan and purpose. Also, sometimes in life, we need to accept a temporary loss for a permanent gain. We also touched upon various other valuable lessons which can be incorporated in our careers. I, Ishita Ghosh, on behalf of IIM Visakh's Business Cluster, extend a hearty vote of thanks for this keynote session on life lessons from my 50 years corporate career. I wholeheartedly thank our guests, Mr. Pradeep Kashyap, and our moderator, Professor Dr. Alok Kumar, for making this event a success. The overall discussion has been very enriching and thought-provoking for all the students of IIM Visakhapatnam, with all the valuable takeaways we can keep pondering upon. Since the success of no program can be attributed to a single person, I extend my gratitude to the administration of IIM Visakhapatnam and the student fraternity for making this event a grand success. Last but not the least, thanks to all the wonderful and patient audience for joining us on this beautiful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ishita.